My name is Chris Ford and I have autism and ADHD. In this video I'm going to tell you how running has saved my life and could save yours if, like me, you are neurodivergent. So today I'm going to tell you what it's actually like being late diagnosed with autism and ADHD and some of the struggles I live with every day and how it impacts my life. I'm also going to share how running is my lifeline and why I'd recommend it to you if you are neurodivergent like me. I also want you to stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to be discussing something I think needs to change. And if you are neurodivergent like me, I think it's something important that we need to discuss. So many years ago I was diagnosed with ADHD, and some time after that I was also given a diagnosis of autism. It was a weird time as I almost grieved for my younger self, knowing now that a lot of my troubles and problems were actually not my fault, it was just the way I was hardwired. I work hard now to understand and live with my diagnosis and improve my life by navigating the triggers to which I must avoid. It's also important that I tell you that I don't consider my ADHD and my autism as a label or a disability or a fashion statement or any of those sort of things. It's just the way I'm made. So to give you some insight into the way my brain works, I want you to think of me and my life as a bucket full of water. And every second of every day, a drop of water is being added. At the bottom of that bucket is a tiny tap. This tap represents running. Every time I go for a run, that tap lets a little bit of water out and stops the bucket from overflowing. Day-to-day life can cause my bucket to regularly overflow. So in order to help me, I live by a routine, I have my lists, I keep the constants constant, I avoid change. Small things can cause me literally to shut down or my bucket to overflow. A good example of how my bucket can easily overflow is something as simple as a doctor saying they will call me at 10 AM in 2 weeks. I will wait for 2 weeks focused on that call, thinking nothing else but that call. But when they call me at 10:15, I have a meltdown, which may seem unreasonable to the person on the end of the phone, but it's like they're sticking a knife into me. It's the same feeling, it's that sensation of pain, and that meltdown persists. Now that meltdown will have a knock-on effect to me for the rest of my week. Now that's just one example, but to give you some other ideas on how my bucket is constantly being added to with water is a day of masking with train journeys, pubs, gyms and social settings in general. They are occasions that are exhausting and overwhelming. Each time more water is added to my bucket, I need to open that tap and release the pressure. And to be able to do that, I go running. So running, how does it actually help me? What benefits does it have for me? And how, as somebody maybe who is neurodivergent, could it work for you also? Well, firstly, it's the training. This provides structure. It provides hyper-focus. I have numbers, I have data. I can focus on my weekly mileage. I can focus on the training sessions. And all of this works very well for me. The training also tires me out, which helps me sleep, which is something I struggle with. When I am tired, I find it harder to manage my well-being and I can become easily overwhelmed. So training allows me to focus on my sleep because I am tired from my training. The joy of being actually out running is where the benefit is. It's a pure sensation of joy. There is a stillness in time. Those racing thoughts I have dwell. My focus relaxes and my mind finally quietens. Running really is, for me, the perfect medication. The completion of a race or a run gives me happiness, and the joy inside settles me and puts me at ease. I'm able to sleep better because I feel better, and this makes me function better. So lastly, and a really key element to it all, is the sort of well-being that you get from exercising. Being outside in nature like today can actually slow down that shutdown, that meltdown that may occur. But like I say, the shutdown that we get when we're neurodivergent, you know, it's like those situations where you're becoming increasingly overwhelmed with life, stuff's getting on top of you, your bucket's filling up. And it's those instances where being outside and exercising, and it doesn't have to be running, but running is the thing that works for me. But being outside and exercising, improving your well-being, can actually slow down that shutdown. And I'll give you a good example. So the other week I was having therapy, and I have that weekly, and I was in a state of I was in a state of shutdown, or slowly getting into a shutdown. I had no interest in anything. My motivation was low. I couldn't concentrate on TV, couldn't concentrate on anything. I didn't want to be anywhere. I just wanted to sit down on the sofa and do nothing, right? That's just, you know, this first or sort of main size of a shutdown's on its way. And we was chatting in therapy, and I said to the therapist, I said, you know what though? Because I now understand my sort of brain and the way I'm made, I knew that this weekend coming, because I had a run coming, I'll be able to shift that focus, shift that mindset away from the shutdown. And I actually turned up on Saturday morning with Ben. I think it was about 7:30 in the morning. We had 18 miles, and I loved it. And it did exactly what I thought it would do, which is it totally switched my chain of thought. It totally switched my mentality. It took away all those negative thoughts. It took away, all that overwhelm. It just disappeared. It just evaporated. I got out there. I chatted. I ran. You know, and I did what I do best, which is, you know, just enjoy my running. And that run, that long run with Ben, basically got rid of or actually stopped me going into shutdown. And that is the power, and that's what I'm saying to you about being outside and running and being part of the in that running process, right? It is so remarkable how that can just switch you instantly. And honestly, I was in a real one of those sort of points in my, we call them cycles now in therapy, but where I am getting to that point of total overwhelm, and it's getting towards that shutdown. But that run, that weekend, instantly clicked me out of it. But because of the work I've done, I knew that was a possibility, and it was spot on. It really did the job. And that's my point, to be honest with you, at the end of this, or as we come to the end of this video, that just being outside, exercising, can really, really help if you're neurodivergent. So the last point that I really want to talk about, and it's a thing I alluded to at the start of this video, and it's probably one of the most sort of biggest tasks I've given myself this year, and that is to work on these races and events. I think as somebody who's neurodivergent, and there are so many more people now getting diagnosis about having ADHD, autism, later on as adults like I did, I think there's something we need to think about in terms of big races and events. And I'll give you some examples, right? So for me, the expo is a nightmare. You're going to a place that's full of people. You've got to get there, which is another story on itself. But there's loads of people. There's loads of, it's like sensory overload. You've got to think about getting a number. You've got to think about doing this. Maybe got to get a tag. Maybe you've got to get a T-shirt. And it can be quite confusing. It can be quite, overwhelming in terms of that element of it. So, you know, straight away, London Marathon, send out bibs to people who are sort of like me, like neurodivergent. Is that something to think about? But it's also, in terms of races and events, it's that travelling to the event. I don't like being on the tube. I don't like being on the train. You know, people close to me, people touching me, people being near me, being in my space. It's hard for me to deal with, and I have to mask all the way through that. I get there and I have to walk up. There's other people. I like walking fast. That's just the way I am. I'm focused in on getting into where I need to get to. I have a now routine when I get to a race. But there's that noise, that sensory overload as well. There's somebody talking on the mic. There's music. There's hustle and bustle. Maybe you have to go and get your number when you get there. You've got to do a bag drop potentially. All these things, in terms of my brain and my mind, the way I'm working, is a challenge. You're then maybe sitting about or whatever, but you've got to queue for the toilet. And I'm not saying, by the way, we need special queues for toilets and this sort of stuff. But I'm trying to explain to you how the brain works for me. So I have a routine when I go to these races. And if that is broken, or I'm not aware of where the toilets are or where the things are,
I start to struggle. Okay, so I'm already sort of exhausted before I've started. Then I go into a corral full of people, and there's nothing against anybody else, but there's a lot of hustle and bustle. People are crammed in. I get it. I was at an event in Leeds, and people are pushing past me and touching me and rubbing like past me to get into the corral. And again, it's nothing to do with them. This is the way I am. But that's quite a hard thing to sort of compute and deal with. And you're sitting there and you're waiting for that moment that is going to come, that you're going to run, right? And you're going to do that race. And that's the good bit. But by the time we get to that bit, I'm almost exhausted from all the sort of, the trials and tribulations that have got me to that point. And that's quite hard to sort of, I suppose, explain. But there's so many things that so many elements that go into these big races, and as somebody who does struggle with that side of things, it's quite a challenging situation. It adds to like the whole day. It's actually easier to run the marathon, right, than it is to sort of do the bit beforehand. All that bit in the corral, or the pen and marching you in and then holding you and I say all the noise and the sounds. It's quite a lot to deal with for somebody like me. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy it, in the terms of the race and the whole thing and that sort of stuff. But it's a discussion, I think, that maybe needs to be had. And I don't know what the end result is. But I say something like the expo, send out your numbers. Something to me like go to an expo is an exhausting experience. But they're the sort of things that I think maybe we need to have a little think about in terms of like that side of things. Again, I'm not looking for special conditions. I'm not looking for like my own pen or anything like that. I'm just wondering if there's something that race organisers could do to make it a little bit more, I don't know, because there's so many people now like coming forward with this diagnosis, and these things can impact you. And I'm going to give you a really good example, right, of how something so small can impact my race day so negatively. And this will make you laugh, but this is the way my brain works. So Toad was taking me to a race. It was the Big Half. Now, that was a race that I was going to struggle because my granddad had just passed. So I had a set thing in mind that I wanted to run. I wanted to be quiet. I wanted to just go out and do my own thing, right? But when Toad picked me up, and I always like to be picked up at the same time, I like to know like well in advance when I'm being picked up. I like to know where I'm being picked up, what time I'm being picked up. I like to know the route, everything, yeah? As you can hear, it's that sort of autism ADHD is kicking in, yeah? But so, and I would ask him multiple times what time. Anyway, he picked me up. We then went and picked somebody else up, which is fine because he told me that. But here's the thing. That person had somebody with them, and Tobe had agreed to take that person as well. Now that threw me out. Firstly, there was a third person in the car that I wasn't used to. I didn't know who they were. But also, that was impacting then how Tobe was going to run the race and what he was going to do at the end. Now, I had already mapped out in my mind, and by the way, it's got nothing to do, well, I'll come back to it, but that in my mind, I'd mapped out the whole day, right? But that one person getting in the car, who's like, he's not to blame at all, Tobe's not to blame. But that threw me out. And I had one of the toughest, hardest races. And even in the morning, in that car journey, I couldn't get over the fact that there was somebody there, and it threw me right out, right? So that's how much a small change can impact me on race day. And they're the trials and tribulations that I have going to a race. Even though I enjoy it, it's a good thing for me, it's a benefit for me, and I love it in a weird way. But they're the sort of things, they're the sort of nuances in terms of the way I work and I think. And that's where it gets me thinking. I go back to what I was saying about, in terms of race day and the whole race thing, is there certain things we can and can't do to make it a little bit easier for people who maybe, have autism or ADHD? And again, right, I'm not looking to change the world, reinvent the wheel, or like have a special thing for special people. I'm not into all that. I'm just saying, is there a way that race organisers can maybe make it easier? I've got no idea, and that's why I wanted to mention it, to see if you had any ideas. Again, you might think, oh, it's just, whatever. But seriously, yeah, if you know somebody who has autism or ADHD, you'll probably understand exactly what I'm saying.
So that's my story, and I wanted to make a little video. about my ADHD and autism because it may help someone else who is like me. I hope that this helps somebody who may be struggling and then takes up running and it actually helps. I hope this helps a partner or a friend of someone who is neurodivergent like me, so they're a bit more understanding of those unique ways that we have. Autism and ADHD are not illnesses. They're not labels. They're not a fashion statement. It's just a way that we are wired. It's a little bit differently to other people. And you know what? That's okay. Remember guys, you've got to take care of yourselves, whatever shape or form that takes. Just take care of yourselves. And for me, I take care of myself by going running.